Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show, The Experience. I'm so appreciative for you to join us. Today we have a special guest across the pond, Steve Anael Nobel, and he's the author of 5 nonfiction books. The most recent is his free ebook entitled Starseeds. He was a director of a not-for-profit spiritual organization called Alternatives, based in St. James Church, Piccadilly, London, W1. Americans probably don't know what that means, but for 13 years. And leaving on the winter solstice of 2012, and that's a special time. Subsequently, he began his own healing and awakening work. He has created a healing system called Soul Matrix for Starseeds. It's healing for Starseeds. He has created a library of free resources, including meditations and transmissions to help Starseeds, which are freely available on his website and YouTube channel. And I will just say, if any of you have heard of Steve, you have probably checked out his meditations and transmissions, and they're amazing. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for being
Thanks,
on the
Laura.
show.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. We haven't spoken for about a year now, so it's great to be back.
Yeah, thanks. So as you all probably fans of Steve's have been tuning in, he is very prolific in his generation and hospitality to you all, and just giving this delicious work to you all for healing and downloads and transmissions. And so today we're going to focus on something that he's been focusing on, and that is the Starseed-Magician, the time of magician. And I can read a little bit of this, or if you want, Steve, go ahead and just start sharing.
Well, yeah, well, let's see. Where should we start? Well, I suppose I should.
You are a magician.
I'm a magician, yeah. I suppose I should say that it began in childhood, actually. I think children are magical. We kind of forget their magical powers. They have great imaginations, and they can kind of work with energy. And when I was a child, I was really into magic and superheroes. This was my way of magic. Spider-Man, X-Men, Doctor Strange, and the idea that beings have superpowers. They can fly, they can levitate, they can walk through walls, see through walls. Superman, Batman, all these kind of characters. I love the idea. And then from there, I progressed to other comics, like futuristic ones and sci-fi ones. And I loved Doctor Who. I guess you have it over in America. And of course, Star Trek, which I loved dearly in my adolescent years. So this was my whole magical. The universe is magical. But I was at school and I had a family that weren't that magical. So soon I had to kind of get the idea. I had to forget all this. It's only fantasy. It doesn't really exist. There are no superheroes anymore. And so I just kind of forgot about that, went normal, got a normal job, got married, and tried to be normal, but it didn't work.
Live the muggle life.
Yeah, the muggle life, yeah. and then I started waking up in the early 90s, and then I started diving in. I left the muggle life, and I dived into metaphysics. I found a brilliant teacher. I dived into shamanism, witchcraft, and then later, all kinds of energy work and NLP, and later hypnotherapy. And so then there was a whole period of learning about magic again. And then I had a dark night of the soul, and I stopped doing all of that stuff. And then I came out of it, and I started doing it again in a new way, calling upon angelic forces to help in the whole magical, starseed magical process. So that's where I'm at now. It's a very quick what's been happening to me over the last, 20 years.
It's so good. It's such a good synopsis. And I think for right now, and this is absolutely through my lens, I see that a lot of people are going through their dark night of the soul. And I feel like I say that a lot, but I feel like the quality of it is changing. There's an amplification. There's a quickening in the pace of what's happening. And
yeah.
So talk about your view of what's happening with people.
Yeah, well, we are in an ascension period, which started probably slowly after World War II, I think. There was a kind of shift after World War II. Starseeds started coming in. The beings which were kind of not your regular kind of type that have been on the planet for a long time. And the kind of soul that's been on the planet for a long time are those who've been through the whole history of, you know, war, domination, plundering, slavery, and that, all of that. If you look at the history of the last 10,000 years or so, it's not easy. So starseeds have not really gone through a lot of that. Some of them have. They've come in with a very different energy, different perspective, different energy field, different consciousness. And so this ascension process is being aided by starseeds on the one hand, who are kind of coming into the collective consciousness with a new energy, and also we're being bombarded by new light from the central sun. The planet's being bathed in light, and also there's a new grid forming in the inner earth. So the light grids around the planet, within the planet, are shifting, which is changing everything. So this shift is what I call, and what a lot of people call, 3D to 5D. And basically what that is, 3D is separation consciousness. Rocks are hard, water's wet. You know, if you look at the newspapers, there's a lot of judgment and blame and fear and schisming. This group doesn't like that group, and all of that. 3D. It's a dog eat dog world. You know, it's hard world. And I worked in that world for a while and lived in that world for a while. It's really difficult for sensitive. Starseeds are sensitive, so it's very difficult. The shift to 4D and 5D. 4D is where the whole concept of magic opens again. In 4D, we can do magical rituals, mantras, you know, intention, focus, the idea that the world is our mirror, that our inner world and outer world reflect one another, that we create our reality. All of this becomes a norm. And the idea that we create our reality really came online in the 60s with channels really talking about it. And the shift to 5D is where we kind of really shift up the vibrational scale. And we stabilize in higher frequencies of light or joy or love or flow or magic or synchronicity, all these things. So we don't have to do all the rituals and the focusing there. It's just our energy sets the tone for the whole reality. So this is the shift people are going through. Some people, and a lot of people are waking up, some of them going through the dark night of the soul. I did. It's really a wake-up call. It's like being bitten by a scorpion and going through some kind of, you know, healing crisis and waking up on the other side, feeling stronger and, you know, more open type of thing. So that's in a nutshell. Externally, the planet is going through a lot of volatility because of the shift in energy. So we're seeing a lot of old systems shifting, financial, political, legal. All of these things are wobbling and shifting, and of course there are groups trying to shore them up and hold it all together. So it's almost like two rivers meeting. One is the old river that's been going on a long time of this is the way things are, and there's another river of people who are interested in alternative living, in saving the planet, in loving the planet, in being connected to energy. So these are the streams going on at the moment, and it's confusing for a lot of people. Those waking up and those not waking up.
It's beautiful what you say, and I have this image in my mind of what I would consider old paradigm, and that kind of intent to hold it together against all odds, and just the crumbling. That in my mind, the energy just can't hold it anymore. It's almost reverse manifestation, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. It's gone from manifest, it's starting to go back into the etheric, to dust, perhaps to nothingness. And this energy of anchored light is so supportive of manifest reality now. That it has been trippy, and maybe we could talk about that too. Just the other day, I was seeing a ripple in my vision was rippling, and I see this. It was corresponding with a very high frequency that I was feeling, and I realized that I'm not quite ready to hold that frequency and work with the energies yet. But it's a desire that I have, and I know it's moving quickly. But just like, there it is, and then it was like, oh, my internal sort of consciousness was like, oh, what's that? Wait, that can't be happening. So there's like this internal, I wouldn't say fear, just like unfamiliarity, perhaps.
Oh yeah, sure.
So I think, I mean, if any of you who are watching are going through this where you're recognizing, for me, it's an opening in the heart space. It's almost like this portal of opportunity in the heart space. It's like a, it's like a little incubator of new reality energy.
Yeah,
And
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want you to riff with me on that, because I know you know this stuff too, energetically. You speak to it in all of your awesome transmissions. And, what do we do with it? How do we work with it?
Well, if we think we've joined the caterpillar world, here we are, like we're all caterpillars, and even starseeds are caterpillars. And then when we wake up, the caterpillar gets called into the cocoon, and this incubation process you're talking about. Whereas a lot of caterpillars are going, well, what's going on? I don't know. Where are these guys going? They're kind of changing and shifting, and I can't understand it. So even the people going into the cocoon don't understand it often. They go, what's happening to me? We don't know what's going on. Something's happening. We better read about it on the internet and find out what's going on. But when we're in the cocoon, our old world is dying, essentially. Our old life is dying. The old identity is dying. And we emerge as these butterfly, the kind of metaphor of caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. We're a new being where we have these new potential. We can do stuff that we couldn't do before. Our consciousness can access stuff we couldn't do before. But the process is terrifying because, I'm sure the caterpillars who go into the cocoon have got no idea actually what's happening. Their whole body starts changing.
Their friend caterpillars, they're not like, hey, where are you going, buddy? What's happening?
I know. From what I understand about the process is that the caterpillar's body starts to change dramatically, and there are new cells that start to be born in the body of the caterpillar, and the immune system of the caterpillar thinks it's being attacked. And so it starts fighting with these immune cells, but these new cells. But eventually, the new cells overwhelm the immune system of the caterpillar and create this new being, which must be an incredibly difficult process if you've got no idea what's going on. But nowadays we've got books, we've got teachers, we've got webinars that tell us, don't worry, it's all right. Just be with it, breathe, soften, relax, trust the process. All these things, which are great. And we do emerge, but it's a trust process, and we are shifting out of our familiarity zones. The old familiar life goes. Our relationships, our sense of self, our work, all can shift. It can all start seeming meaningless, and we have to find, well, what's our new life? What's our new identity? And that can be confusing when the old life goes and the new one hasn't quite formed. There's this in-between world, which is like, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't relate to my old life, and the new one hasn't quite kicked off yet. So this is confusing, but that is the process. So, which is why we put these kind of recordings out there, so we can tell you, look, don't worry, it's all right. I've been through this a couple of times myself. The last one, the Dark Night, was incredibly difficult. I mean, 6 years in the cocoon was a long time, and it wasn't pleasant. And I did actually, when I talked about the Dark Night, I had a client once say to me, oh, I had a Dark Night of the Soul. It happened to me last Tuesday. And I'd say, well, a Dark Night of the Soul doesn't really happen last Tuesday. It happens.
It wasn't just at night.
I had 10 minutes of a dark night. It doesn't usually happen like that. It would be nice if it did, actually.
Maybe a wave of it, a blast of it.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you. And I think that the word that you brought up that I wrote down to remind myself is trust, because there is that, everything is a frequency, the wavelength. And so, there are peaks and valleys. And when you've lost that sense of familiarity, it's like, when is it ever going to come? If you're having a catastrophic destruction of your present reality, and you're starting from the ground up, that rebuilding process, in addition to your conceptual framework being dismantled and having to literally reconstruct it from this new interpretation, it might take a little bit of time.
Yeah. Well, the word trust means we've got to trust in something beyond ourselves. Well, usually in the world, we're trained in the West to be independent, strong, I'm generating my own life path, and trust means there's something higher, greater, broader, deeper than me that has a better idea of where I'm going than I do. And that's a big shift if we're kind of the independent beings who are really, we're in charge of our destiny. Nobody else is in charge. But when we come to the kind of metaphysical spiritual world, we hear there's a higher self, there's a oversoul, there's angels, there's guides, there's all these beings holding us and helping us. And in the beginning we go, well, we don't know, where are they? I can't feel them. But the more we go into silence and meditate and connect, I mean, I feel intuition and also connection to spirit happens first through the body and through the feelings and the emotion side, and we get responses back through the body and the emotion side. You know, like if I'd ask a question to my higher self, should I go left or right, should I choose up or down, and trusting, oh well, left feels more expansive, that feels lighter, and the other way feels a bit heavier, and trying it out with smaller things, and then go, oh, it seems to work, I seem to be getting answers. And then discerning where the ego's trying to come in and fool us, because the ego will start to mimic the intuition, go, well, we know the way, you know, which is really the mind coming in saying, don't listen to all that heart stuff, the mind is the one that knows the way. So it's a whole process. And what's really going on in the process as we go in the cocoon is this, it's a kind of a battle between the ego, our old ego self, and our higher self. And this kind of battle is going on. And the ego self, whatever the ego self is comprised of, because some of our egos are very driven, very ambitious, very extrovert. Some people have egos which are very introvert, much more quieter, much more thoughtful. Some people are have to think everything out, have to know everything in advance, strategize everything. So all these kind of ways of surviving the world, which we've learned, this is our ego, our personality. Suddenly we're told we don't trust it anymore. There's something higher, there's something deeper. Trust the heart, trust the higher self. So trust is a big one, because it's really like, there's a film, what's it called? Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I don't know if you've seen that one, Nora, where...
I've not seen that one.
Oh, I think it's the third one, where he's actually, Indiana's kind of going on these magical adventures, and he comes to a point where he comes to a chasm, and he can't see the way across, and he reads the kind of magical inscription that says, there's a kind of take the step out in the void type of thing, and the bridge will arise. And he thinks, this is crazy, but he does it, and actually he can't see, there's a kind of weird light there, and he can't see that it actually is a bridge there. So we're asked to trust beyond what our senses tell us, beyond what our ego is telling us. And the ego, it goes through a process also in the cocoon of softening and relaxing and adjusting, and eventually aligning with this higher intelligence. Because while our left brain ego, logical mind, is fighting our intuition, it's kind of draining, exhausting. You know, you have an intuition, I think I should just, you know, resign my job, or I think I should just visit Istanbul, or whatever it is, and the ego goes, are you crazy? You know, what are you talking about? You know, that's crazy. And this is something we go through. I mean, it's something I've gone through. I remember wanting to resign from a well-paid job, and actually asking the universe. I'd gone through a lot of spiritual practice, asking the universe, should I resign? And the answer came back on this t-shirt, Nike t-shirt, just do it. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, it hit me like a thunderbolt. That's the energy of it was quite strong, but my mind said, are you crazy? Are you going to just give up your job because of a t-shirt? Everyone will think you're bonkers. And I remember this conversation going on. And I thought, oh, maybe, yeah, okay, maybe that's right. You know, maybe I shouldn't give up.
What am I thinking? Yeah, no. What? I just lost myself for a second.
But then I saw the same message in a window within the next 2 or 3 minutes. And I went, you know what? I've got the answer. I know that's true. I resigned after, it was a 10-year job I've been in. I resigned. And then I was taken on a whole magical adventure. And it was the perfect timing. I didn't know that till 2 years down the line. But that resigning there was perfect for something that happened 2 years down the line. If I resigned later, I would have missed a major opportunity. So it was a major lesson in trusting, actually. So we've got to trust a higher power, and that higher power is within us, but we've got to discern our little ego voices, and then, you know, separate them, pull them apart and go, this is my ego, and this is my heart or my higher self. And this is the basic lesson we learn. Which one do I trust? And then we start to trust more the higher self and start to flow more. We make decisions that changes our life, and we might go, there might be a period of, oh my God, have I made the right decision? But eventually we see, we relax into it and go, oh yes, it was right. Of course there are challenges, but it was right.
That's beautiful. And we do get those signs of verification, of validation, if we allow ourselves. And this work is very subtle. So I think people who may be going through it may be wondering, well, it's not obvious to me, because we're used to obvious being a more, I don't know, a louder, more hard experience, and this is a softer, subtler feeling place.
Yeah, totally. And you know, for many of us, we're trained in the hard way is the right way, you know, no pain, no gain, and all that. And to hear, well, there's a way of ease and grace, sounds almost like heretical.
Yeah.
This is the shift, isn't it? You know,
hedonistic.
Yeah. Ease and grace. Well, you know, how can you grow? Even people on the spiritual path. Well, how's that going to grow? How are you going to grow through that? You know,
blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, it's got to be hard work. You know,
it's going to really suck.
I actually, I had a coaching client years ago, and this guy was a son of a friend. She was spiritual. He was kind of quite semi-spiritual, but actually had also a Catholic upbringing. So there was a kind of Catholic side to him. And he had a choice to make between a very academic course at university or a less academic course. And his mother was very worried because she thought he was making the wrong choice. And he was going to choose the hard path, which was the very academic. He was dyslexic. It wasn't really the ideal for him. But I remember sitting opposite him and saying, well, look, one of them, you know, there's these two choices. Which one are you going to choose? And he says, well, I'm going that one, the academic, because it's the hard way, it's the right way, it's the, you know, it means I'm going to graft and work.
The impressive way, if I can get through it.
Yeah. So what I had to do was persuade him that actually he was wrong, that actually the hardest path was the other one. So I just kind of persuaded him. I can't remember how I did it. I just sat there saying, you know, it's completely wrong. That is not the hard path. This is the one that's going to be the most challenging. And actually he chose that path, the less academic. He excelled brilliantly at it. And he's now traveling the world. He's a musician traveling. He's traveled all over. He's only about 23. He's amazing. Wow. But I had to persuade him, take the easy path. But I had to kind of wrap it in terms of it's not as easy as you think. But actually, I was kind of not being totally truthful there, because it was actually an easier path for him.
Reverse psychology.
Yeah, but he wasn't going to take it unless I actually kind of duped him in that way. So, and I did it for his highest best, because now he's actually thriving and very happy. He's doing very, very well, making kind of albums and going to China and Scandinavia and all over the place. So he seems to be doing very well.
Well, I think that's really where we're headed. You know, I think musicians and artists have a leg up in this transition because they're already channeling their higher self. You know, they're already working with that divine energy, and to shift a conceptual terminology into something that is doing that, allowing that all the time, seems to me an easier transition than somebody who's like a mathematician or empirical sciences, where you're having to have trust in something that is unseen, and we haven't valued measuring the unseen, you know?
Yeah. Well, a lot of starseeds are attracted to the musical path, and a lot of starseeds came in very early on, like John Lennon and David Bowie and Jimi Hendrix, these type of people. They were very different. There was a very different energy they were speaking out. And it wasn't that they're perfect beings, because they definitely weren't perfect, but they were bringing a new message. But some starseeds are attracted to science. You know, Einstein probably almost definitely was a starseed. Tesla was a starseed, I believe. You know, and if you look at Edison was pedantic. You know, the light bulb guy, and he was pedantic, 1,000 experiments, you know, that's not a starseed way. Whereas Tesla used to sit down and dream it all into being, and he didn't even have to experiment. He knew what would
channeling,
work.
Yeah, he was the whole time.
And Edison says, you're not a real scientist, get out. You know, they couldn't work together, because that's classic story of starseed and kind of earthseed scientists. Totally different way of looking at things. And a lot of starseed kids now, I've watched them, they just download. You know, they pass exams by downloading it. It's quite incredible. I've seen a few of them just playing video games and then passing all their exams with A's. You know,
that's my kids. I've actually told them that they can just channel the answers, and they're doing it.
That's the way to do it.
They're like, phew, it's so much easier.
Oh, it's totally easier. You know, I mean, I'm doing it now. It took me a long time to trust the process, but I basically go in the shower and I might get a whole transmission downloaded, or a meditation downloaded, or a whole idea that fixes in my mind, or I'm cycling or something. But that's something that I've learned to trust over the years. Whereas kids now can do it, they're just doing it automatically, you know, downloading a whole load of stuff. It's quite incredible.
Well, they didn't have to have it sort of mushed out of them or you know, crushed out of them and then heal to emerge again. They've just emerged with that awareness.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
One of the things that I'm finding, which is really cool in my hypnotherapy work, is how much healing can happen in the womb. And I'm talking to people before they conceive their children to connect with the souls of their children that are coming in, and just staying in a state of connection with them when they're in utero, because we're finding more and more that the personality of the infant is, while they're developing, is the personality of mom and dad. They don't have a personality yet. They're just soul mind. And then when they come out, they're imprinted. So if mom is really stressed out or really negative about the pregnancy, well, guess what? Baby is going to have that imprint to work beyond. And not to put a qualifier on it like good or bad. It just is. And we as souls definitely know that we're coming to earth to have this physical experience. But how wonderful to open up the playing field so that there's just ease, and then the potential for what can happen is just limitless. Like that's what really lights me up, is the idea of us just getting beyond the stuff that just seems pedantic and into the real playing field of delight and expansion and creativity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, magic has all kinds of realms, and the magic of conception, the magic of a child coming through the womb, and the magic of shaping that, positively holding that soul coming through, which, and most people, this is a trouble in the world at the moment, in the 3D dimension, sexual intimacy is a lot of it is unconscious. A lot of conception is unconscious. You know, people conceive while drunk, or all kinds of ways, and that has such a negative effect on the incoming soul. Whereas I think in the future, this idea of the Starseed-Magician, actually conceiving people magically in terms of consciously, you know, consciously inviting the soul, consciously coming together. Tantra is a form of this, where we're becoming more conscious of this energy inside of us, which is a very powerful manifestation energy. Actually, there are even beyond conception of a new soul, sexual energy can be used for manifestation. You know, and of course that can be light and dark, so we have to be very careful what we do with that. It's a very powerful force. But we can also consciously say no to an incoming soul, I feel. This is something I've experienced, where we can actually, I think in the future, contraception will be as much a conscious energy thing as it is a kind of practical thing with practical means of protecting our body and everything like that.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I love that. So just say a little bit more about that, because I don't know that anyone's talking about this right now. The idea of setting intention in conjunction with, so it's just being more conscious about how we're being in relationship.
Yeah. I'm just think of an example. Well, I remember years ago, I was in my second long-term relationship. I had a stepson I already had 2 children. I had a stepson who was about 9, I think he was at that age. And then he started dreaming about having a baby brother or sister. My partner started having a dream about it. I had a friend who was a kind of channel saying, I dreamt about you having a child together. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the signs are there, you know, of being, something's happening. So
a fertility goddess is flying around me.
Yeah. So I had a chat with my partner she is Cancerian, and the Cancerian energy is very motherly, isn't it? And I said to her, would you like another child? She says, well, maybe it would be nice. And I thought, oh, well, okay, we have to have a big chat about this, because there's no way I want to have. And so we had a long chat, and then she realized, yes, okay. So actually I realized it would be nice, but I've already got my son. I don't really want anybody else. And then basically in meditation, I connected to the soul and said no to the soul coming in. And for about 2 or 3 days, I felt the intensity of this energy going, I want to come in. And I just said, we're not ready. We're not able to invite you. And then after 2 or 3 days, the soul went away, and it went.
Wow.
And so that was kind of just chatting with the soul. No, we don't want you to come in.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so there's that one. And then, of course, the other side was when I practiced, I practiced for a long time conscious sexuality, which meant actually doing what I consider energy locks in the body. And so in the old days, I used to say, in the early days, I used to say to my partner, do you want to conceive? And they would say no. And I'd say, great, nor do I. Let's do something energetic to lock the potential so it blocks it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did, we'd place these light shields, actually in the woman's body, with her consent, placing a light shield so she couldn't conceive. So actually the seeds would be repelled energetically. And so I did that. And but what I forgot to do was, when we broke up, I forgot to unlock this shield.
Yeah.
And she called me a few years later saying, I'm trying to conceive and I can't conceive. I've spent loads of money on IVF and I just can't conceive. And I sat down and I went, oh my goodness, I've just remembered the lock. And I said to her, look, I've just remembered what we did. Do you remember this? And she said, oh, of course. So I took the lock off and I opened it up and we had a long chat, and she then did another IVF and conceived. And her son is now about 10 years old. And we get on really well. He's a brilliant starseed and he really loves me and I love him, actually. And some years later, the mother said, I want to conceive another child to be a brother or sister. I don't want him to grow up alone. And so we had a chat about it. And basically, the only thing she could say was, it would be nice if that happened. That was the only motivation. It would be nice. And I said, that's not really a strong enough motivation. It would be nice. And so I didn't feel, there was nothing to undo in her, but I just didn't feel there was any juice in her wanting another, rather than it would be nice. And I said, well, it may not be nice. He may not like that can happen. He may not like the brother or sister. So she never did conceive the second one, but she did conceive the first one. And so this whole area of conscious conceiving is a whole vast area that's not really explored very much. And the other edge of that is that sexually transmitted diseases, I believe, are only transmitted in a certain vibrational frequency. So they can't exist in the body above a certain frequency. So if you are really keeping your energy high and your partner is, these energies are very, very difficult to maintain in the body. So I remember having a chat with a doctor, a female, this woman who was spiritual, and she was a bit horrified by what I'm talking about. She said that, she was coming from a very medical point of view. She said, this is not the way it is, and I went, well, okay, this is just my reality then. And I'll
probably testable. You probably can test the frequency of the cells, I would imagine, somehow.
Possibly, yeah.
The bandwidth, the range.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an area that in the future a lot of people will be exploring. Some channels already have talked about this. I remember reading one channel talked about this kind of conscious conceiving, using our energy consciously, because most of the misery on the planet in the 3D dimension is created by unconscious sexuality. People coming together are not suited for each other at all, having a child, and then maybe one parent going away, or maybe staying together, even worse, staying together, arguing or whatever, and that's
and unhealed power dynamics, and the violence of a lot of like sexuality that hasn't advanced beyond really a violent animalistic dynamic.
Yeah. And for some people, being celibate for a while is a very good thing. It just will test all those old programs in them. I mean, I think it's good to be celibate for a while, not like going in the priesthood or something, doing it that way.
Not oppressively.
No.
But to enjoy your own to reinterpret, recalibrate your understanding of what your sexuality is. I mean, I honestly don't know very many people who haven't had some sort of messed up, traumatic early sexual experience that they, it's a great celibacy or just taking a break. I tell my clients, I recommend benching themselves. Put yourself on the bench, like in a sporting event, like bench yourself for a while, just get off the game, get out of the game, and just learn about what it is that you actually really want. Pay attention to yourself, give yourself what you need. I mean, that's a really big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's wonderful, radical advice. Of course, the collective would think we're all balmy, I suppose, but here we are on the fringes, exploring magic and exploring energy and consciousness. And it has limitless potential, really. It's limitless. In the old days, people understood what magic was. In Egypt, people worked with magic all the time. Magic and spirituality was linked, connected, and Tibet was connected. And of course, there's shamanism, but of course, it had to go underground because it kind of got demonized and split. And it's all about black magic and evil stuff, and so it went underground. And it's only now, or since probably the '60s, it started to come back up again. It started to be okay again.
Right.
I remember in the '60s when I was a kid watching the film Bewitched, the series Bewitched, and my father saying it's not suitable watching. It's wonderful. I Dream of Jeannie and all these things. And I just loved it all. It's all magical.
Oh, yeah. Well, and what's interesting, and I'm curious what you think about this, the term alchemical, though, has a little bit less negative connotation these days. Like I see a lot of alchemical, spiritual, metaphysical applications of that word.
Yeah. Well, alchemical is a process of transformation, transmutation, which magic is. When we start engaging in magic, we transform ourselves. Or spirituality, it's an alchemical process because we go into like the cocoon butterfly thing, we're alchemically transformed. All the parts of us are mixed and brought to the light. Everything unconscious is brought to consciousness. Our ego is shifted and changed. Our shadow energies, the shadow is everything we deny about ourselves, is brought to the light, and we have to integrate all of this. So the spiritual path is challenging. It's not easy, but it transforms. It's the alchemical lead into gold, which is really the old thing. We're transforming the ego and the body of lead into the higher light body and the higher self of gold, and we're joining them together. We don't leave the body. We're doing it in the body. It's all the process in the body. We're doing it in the world. We're having relationships and earning money and paying rent and having fun and transforming. But of course, most people in the world, the caterpillar world, has got no idea it's going on. They have no idea what's going on. They're watching soap operas on TV and, the endless channel hopping and going out drinking and going into addictions and, whatever they're doing. They've got no idea.
Like crap and not knowing why.
Yeah, feeling that crap. And then maybe they feel so bad that they might try something alternative. They might be pushed into something like hypnotherapy or something. For some people, it's a wake-up call, but for a lot, it's just like a way of coping and going back into the old world. So.
And eventually, whether it is, there's so much in that just little morsel, because there's the potential for them to just stay in the reality that they are, and for the people who are ready to go into the reality of greater potential to do that. But I wanted to stick with that alchemical place too, because the alchemists were using spirituality back in the day, and our scientists, our medical people are derivative from the alchemists with that surgical extraction of the metaphysical aspect, of the magical aspect. And it sort of veered off into this sort of clinical non-magical realm, and I do believe that it's coming back, because I think it's been, I don't know. I don't even know if I really want to go there, but I feel like there's been what's the word? A distortion of what healership is to create what it has become, or I don't know. Do you want to speak to this at all?
A distortion, you say, of healership?
Yeah, well, if scientists and doctors in the Western sort of doctor medicine pharmaceutical
All right.
complex,
Yeah.
industrial complex, has gone way out into the hard sciences, where there's just completely void of anything that is not concrete. It's
Yeah.
like a complete subtraction of things that are not measurable, but there are other things in our reality that we pay attention to that aren't measurable either, like happiness.
Yeah.
I guess
Love.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe to a hard-nosed scientist, they don't exist. Maybe, but I think you're right, and I think it's got worse for the medical profession, certainly over the last 40 or 50 years. Because I remember when I was very young, going to a doctor and having terrible earache as a kid, and I remember saying to this doctor, it was a woman doctor. It's the one thing I really remember, and I said, "Is this pain going to come back?" And in the old days, the doctors were kind of like they knew the kind of placebo effect, I think, or they intuitively knew it. And she said, "It's not going to come back. Don't worry. You take this, and it will clear it all up." And it was really like it never came back. I just was so happy that the doctor had said that, and I was just so relieved.
You trusted her.
I
Yeah.
trusted her, and that was one experience of the doctor. And then I went back when I was 50. I thought I should have a checkup. You think, well, I should be checked up. And I went to a doctor, and the doctor said, "Okay, well, look, I'm going to do all these, put my finger up places I should, didn't really talk about, and all that. Check your, bits." And he said, "But the thing I remember saying, but look, 1 in 3 walk out of this office with a positive prognosis, and if that happens," and they just told me the whole timeline of horrible suffering and terrible procedures, and I just looked at him thinking, the guy's he's implanting a whole load of stuff in me, and I had to consciously go, I'm not having that. Anybody in authority, as a hypnotherapist, anybody in authority has a power to put suggestions in people, and I know they're trying to protect themselves, but it was actually a terrible set of stuff they were plonking in me, and I had to kind of delete it. Which is why I don't go and see a doctor, because if I'm seeing a doctor for anything I'm wrong with me, and you look around the kind of surgery, you see posters on TB is on the, and you need an injection for that, and you need a vaccine for this, and colds are coming, and there's all these suggestions around about everything wrong with the body, and of course it's working on the old, kind of it rose out of the Industrial Revolution, didn't it? Where the body's just a mechanism that can go wrong. Doctors still look at it that way. It's a machine that goes wrong, and we just put drugs in it or cut bits out, and it'll be fine again. There's nothing about consciousness. There's nothing about emotion. Nothing about lifestyle. All the old healing practices, like Chinese, what's environment you in, what kind of lifestyle do you lead, what's your nutrition like. Doctors have got no even idea about nutrition. I think they have 3 hours in their 3 or 4 years training on nutrition. It's dreadful. And hospitals are the worst places to go often, unless you're really desperate. If you want to go in there, you could catch something. I try and avoid. And I had a great auntie who was 99 when she died, and she said to me, I'm never going to go into a hospital, because I know the moment I go in is the moment I'm going to die. She never went in her whole life into a hospital, and she went in and she died within a week. And that is maybe a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the other thing about this is that there is hope, because there's a lot of scientists nowadays who are sounding like mystics. There's some great films that have come out, What the Bleep Do We Know, and Down the Rabbit Hole. And if you watch Down the Rabbit Hole, which is a 5-disc DVD set, it's scientist after scientist talking about spirituality, about energy, about experiments, which are really basically proving what a lot of mystics have believed for centuries. So that's a really good thing. Down the Rabbit Hole, which is a follow-on from What the Bleep Do We Know. There's a lot of scientists now, PhD scientists, who are kind of separating from the mainstream. The whole quantum field.
Right, like Bruce Lipton and those guys.
Yeah, all these guys. Bruce Lipton, who I've met 2 or 3 times, for a while, he was considered a heretic. He was excluded, and then eventually experimentation proved what he was talking about. That cells can shift by not just the external environment, not by the genes, but by our inner and outer environment.
Yep, the epigenetic
epigenetics. So
Yeah.
all these experiments are shifting, what we believe to be true. And I think that's going to increase at a very fast rate over the next few decades. Our whole paradigm is shifting. If you went back to my parents' day, the 1950s, and thought, if I went and told my father in the 1950s, here I was, a kid coming in the late 50s, I said, Dad, look, there's going to be the internet, and there's going to be mobile phones, and there's going to be rockets to the moon. He would have thought I was mental. So things are increasing at a very, very fast rate. What was considered, science and magic are blending now. Really, they are blending.
Thank goodness, because it's so much more fun. I mean, it's having a sterile life without any magic or spirituality. First of all, that means there's nothing beyond this life. And then what the heck are we doing here anyway? Like, why would we even be here if there was nothing beyond this?
Yeah.
But people really do believe that, Steve. People really struggle with this being it, and the fear of death is a real thing for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, in the 3D world, something arose, which is very helpful, actually, called the Spiritualist movement. The churches and everything.
Oh, yeah. I've been to Arthur Finley myself.
Oh, you have? Okay. Well, my brother's a medium, and he's pretty good,
cool.
and he can see entities and spirits, and I can't see them in the way he sees them. But I've been to a few.
I feel them. You feel. I know you feel them. I mean,
I feel them and I can hear them. I just can't see them.
Yeah.
But the Spiritualist Church arose out of this desire from families to is there more than just this life? Have my loved ones survived? After World War I and World War II, there's a great surge of interest because they wanted to know whether their loved one was alive or not, or whether they're okay or not. And actually, very interestingly, in terms of our subject, I remember a case in World War II where this psychic or medium was consulted by this family, and the son came through. He'd been killed in his boat had been torpedoed in the North Sea or something, and he went down. And he told the medium, well, I've been killed. I drowned. I've been on the other side, and I sank in HMS, whatever it was, and up near Norway. And somehow MI5, this is the kind of Secret Service, got hold of it. And they said that she must have been a spy because there's no way she could have known this without being a spy of some kind, because the ship did go down and they didn't report it. No one knew about it. And so they stuck her in prison for a few years. So people do go along to get proof. And there is a lot of proof in the 3D paradigm. People don't have to be spiritual to go along. And I've seen some that are amazing. The guys come through and tell them stuff that they couldn't have possibly known. And so there's lots of proof, even in the 3D matrix, of survival of death,
Oh, for sure. I mean, Eben Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven, he's a neuroscientist, neurosurgeon. Have you ever read that book?
He came to Alternatives in London, the organization. He came after I left, but I know he came there. I did read up on him. He's a really interesting guy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And he's from North Carolina and Virginia. So he's from the South.
Okay.
But it's really interesting. There's so much proof. People are, the information is there if we want to pay attention to it,
Yeah. Well, I think spirituality is a kind of practice where we can experientially realize and understand and feel that actually there's more to life than this body. We can kind of journey outside the body and come back. People do that in, shamanic journeys and all kinds of journeys. There was there was an author, Hay House author. I think she was living in Hong Kong and she was diagnosed with terrible cancer. And I think she kind of died for a while on the operating table or something and went over to the other world, and they said, you've got a choice. You can come back.
Anita Moorjani.
That's it, Anita Moorjani. Yeah, she came to Alternatives a few times. I heard her speak. And she had a choice, and she said, well, I'll go back. I don't think I'm finished yet. And she came back and her cancer cleared up.
I know, like 3 weeks later. That's a whole area that I'm super fascinated with, the NDE experience and the relationship between, because in past life regression and life between live sessions and NDEs, there's a lot of similar things that are happening. And also, people are having spontaneous transformational spiritual experiences they get these after effects where, you're talking about the dark night of the soul. They're having their lives break apart in front of them. And a lot of these people have access to more of themselves, their soul selves. They have more telepathic capabilities. They have psychic, mediumistic abilities, healing capabilities that come back after they've had near-death experiences. And if any of you who are watching are interested, there is a resource online that is a database, the near-death experiences research foundation.
All right.
And
Okay.
and they have thousands of personal accounts of near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences, and they're mind-blowing. And so that you see them over and over again as you read through them, that they just had this awareness that that this was their true life, that this was more real than the life that they're living here on earth. And then what that brought to them was so much peace and this innate shift when you know that there's more and you know how beautiful it is beyond this lifetime. You can really have access to what it is you really came here to do and have fun with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, as the way I look at it, we are multidimensional. This is the whole thing that's opening up for us. We're not linear, multidimensional. There's lots of places, lots of dimensions we can exist in, where the rules of living may not exactly be the same as here. Jesus said, "In my Father's mansion there are many rooms," which I think is kind of a reference to this multidimensional nature. And so this is just one place of many. And I do feel that to face death and be unafraid, there's two ways of doing it. One is to have a lot of spiritual practice and really to kind of even separate from the body, come back, do a lot of meditation, journeying. But the other way is to really lead a fulfilled life, totally fulfilled. And I had a friend who I watched go through the death process. He passed a couple of years ago, and he was spiritual up to a point. I'd say he was more religious. And he wasn't sure about what was waiting for him on the other side. But he said to me, "I'm not afraid to go." And he wasn't afraid to go. He'd done everything in his life he wanted to do. He supported his family. He did everything. He traveled everywhere where he wanted to go. So in a way, that also, I think, if you've totally lived a fulfilled life, when you come to face death, there's no regret. You just can go. It's just time to go. And that's what I want to do, to do everything I want to do to live a fulfilled life. And I encourage everyone to do that. There was a book, someone who helped people die. She wrote the 5 top, it was something about the 5 top things that people most regret who died. She watched thousands of people die, and people never regretted working longer in the office, or there's a lot of things they regretted: not staying in touch with their friends, not loving more, not following their own heart, listening too much to other people's opinions. She wrote a whole load of five top. I can't remember exactly the name of the person now, but
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
No, it was someone more recent than that.
Oh,
Anyway, it's a brilliant book. So you can imagine that people, it's not about money, it's not about the house, it's not about the Mercedes, it's about love, it's about friendships, it's about connections, it's about doing what you wanted to do, not putting it off. And so if you do that, I think death becomes less of a scary thing, than facing death full of regret or bitterness or angst. Then it becomes a very difficult process, I think.
I agree. And thank you for saying that. And I think of people who aren't necessarily called towards metaphysical concepts and realms. And I think of a family member of mine who is particularly awesome and doing great work in the world, very much in the 3D realm, and just a high integrity human being, not at all interested in metaphysical concepts. But, I think we can also, as spiritually open and expansive beings, we can sometimes be judgmental of those who, and I'm not saying you, of course, I'm just saying, like, as we evolve and we shift, some people are just not going to have the same path as us, and notice what they're doing. Sometimes they're highly evolved souls that have a different trajectory, a different purpose, but they're still doing highly spiritual work in a more 3D framework. And
Oh, absolutely.
I
I think
love
that's
that.
true. Yeah, I think that's true. We're not all called to be, like what I'm doing, what you're doing. There are a lot of people in the world doing some great stuff, which is tough. Can be some great tough. They've got great integrity, and it's an evolutionary journey. And we've all passed through 3D, and maybe we don't need to do that anymore. But there's some, there's lots of qualities to learn there, of courage, of integrity, of honesty, of standing up, of being visible. It's a tough gymnasium, the 3D world. So, there's some people who are doing in England over here. I think there's some politicians with a lot of integrity doing some great things. There's this Extinction Rebellion movement that's just arisen up here, where young people are saying no to what the governments are doing about the planet, and they're doing some great work, and
Beautiful.
yeah, for sure. And the world will change through all kinds of means, not just by us talking about spiritual practice. There's all kinds of ways, all kinds of musicians, artists doing the work, spiritual teachers doing their work, people who are innovating new technology are doing their work. We're all shifting the planet in different ways.
Yeah, there's all value. I think when you feel aligned with your heart's desire, you get a calling, and it feels like activism. So whether the activism is a leadership or a political point of view, or the work that you and I do, working with consciousness, working with spirit realm, or whatever it is, art, music, if that is your activism, do it. Let your heart sing, and then you won't have regrets on your deathbed, right? You'll be doing the good work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do whatever you're called to do, however bizarre.
Yeah.
Follow it and trust it.
Especially if it's bizarre. That's just.
Well, I had a coach tell me some years ago. This was about 10 years ago. He said to me, "You're a magician." This is a coach. He knew what I was into. He said, "You're a magician." And I'm like, well, that's fantastic. But what am I going to do with that? How am I going to be in the world being a magician? People will laugh at me. So I completely discounted it. And then further down the line, realized, well, okay, then that's more what I'm passionate about. I've always been passionate about magic and energy,
And it's just, I think too, there's that component that we're having to reconcile and heal within ourselves now. And that's going from the external point of reference, where we expect the external to verify and validate what's going on, and to the internal, where we can really only get that true validation from checking within. Oh
yeah, it's amazing, the resource within. In meditation, I kind of get all kinds of answers. You can check out things. So we're in this apartment, a brilliant apartment, and we wondered, will the landlord want the apartment back, or can we have another year here? Because we liked it here. And I went in meditation, and I heard the voice said, "You are moving." And I'm like, oh, okay. And my partner didn't want to move, so I didn't tell her. I just kept my mouth shut. And then I heard from the landlord, "We want our place back." And I went, oh, okay. And I kind of, I knew that. I knew it, but I kept quiet. And so we found an amazing apartment, much better actually, further up. I knew when the universe is moving us on, there's a reason for it. I never go, oh, drat, why? This is a fantastic place. There's always something better waiting, I feel. And so that's what happened. We found magically this amazing place, or my partner found it. She found this one, and then she found the other one. And as soon as I went there, go, yeah, this is it. That's it. I know this is the one. We don't need to look anymore. And actually,
the ocean is right
there. The last 15 years, this is the only way I've looked for property magically, by intention, meditation. I tried doing it the regular way once, and it was so painful.
The regular way.
Let's go through the lists. Let's go through the estate agents. Let's go to the area. Let's look around.
Pros and cons.
Oh my God. I spent 3 months doing that. And I said to her, I'm exhausted. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm doing it magically. I said, no more. So we did something, and then within 24 hours, someone said, "Are you looking for a place?" That was the one. There it is. I'm done with the 3D way of doing it. Got to do it magically.
You hear that, people? That
Yeah.
I'm sure some of you can relate to that.
Yeah.
And Steve,
Totally.
thank you so much. I have to have you on more frequently because it's just such a delight, and you're so current. And so we're just going to have to figure out a time where you can come on soon.
Okay.
But I want to do a shout out because Steve is coming to the US, y'all. So he's not going to the South, not yet, but we'll get him next time. Oh, by the way, are you going to Portland? Are you connected with Alice and Co?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Maybe you'll meet her. Anyway, so he's going to go to New Jersey and he's going to go to Portland, Oregon. And what I can do is I can put the dates of that information in the description box below.
I'll give you my events on the thingamajiggy. And so I'm going to Oregon in the, I'm going to New Jersey, the 19th, 20th of October, and then Oregon, Portland, the 26th, 27th. So
awesome.
There we are.
And so that's in the fall, y'all. And so soulmatrix.com is Steve's website.
Thesoulmatrix.com.
The soulmatrix.com. And if you have not experienced Steve's work, it's totally transformative and amazing. So you really need to do that. And I would love if you have any comments, questions.
I'll send you my YouTube link as well. There you are.
Oh, awesome. And anything at all, please put it in the description box in the comments. And if you have a comment for Steve too, I'll be sure to keep him in the loop. So thanks for joining us, everyone. And thank you, Steve, so much. It's such a delight.
Thanks, Nora. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Be well and take care of yourselves in this crazy time and love as much as you can. All right.
Thanks.
Bye now.